And we are back with another episode of NX Office Hours where we talk about all things NX. We talk about features of NX and we take questions from the community about plugins or just general things that have to do with NX. So glad to be back again. And thanks to, first, thanks Zach for doing the hosting. We're gonna be doing more shared hosting, so definitely watch. It was a good episode last time. And this week, Jack is back joining me again. So thanks, Jack, for joining. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, always good to be here. It's been a while since the
Yep,
last time.
yep, definitely. Uh, if you're in the chat room and you want to ask a question, feel free, and we'll try to get to that. Um, yeah, for this episode, as we mentioned before in the posts and things, we're going to talk about a few things. But uh, as mentioned last week, there was the Next.js conf by the company that is behind Next.js for sale, and we wanted to talk about. I gave a lightning talk on using Next.js or the talk was collaborative code with Nx and Next.js, and Jack is one of the core members that maintains the Next.js integration, and wanted to get him on to kind of talk about that more in depth about how Nx and Next.js work together within a monorepo, or if you have multiple apps there. So, Jack, I will
hmm
leave it to you. And if you have any questions, of course, if you have any questions in the chat about Next.js, then of course we'll try to get to those.
Yeah, so I think that the good thing about NX is between different verticals. So you have like React, Next.js, even like Angular.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have anything wildly different between the different technologies. We recommend mostly the same way to do things. Next.js has some differences, so I guess with some of the other applications we might host in our monorepo. So like Next.js itself does a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to how it does routing and everything. So there's very little, I guess, user-led code compared to if you were to build a plain React app, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the challenge for how to use an Next.js app in a monorepo, in particular with NX, is there's not as much places we can plug into to customize, for example, how we import workspace libraries and stuff like that. Um, so those are the places where I think NX does a little bit more work than we would with other regular React apps. But the end result is that you can maintain your Next.js app alongside your other apps, maybe multiple Next.js apps in the same monorepo, and have the same benefit of dependency graph, caching, and everything else that comes with NX. Um, and we try to make the experience as good as possible. We've been working fairly closely with some people who are using some of our builders and schematics in production. I mean, there are always cases where we may not want to necessarily support, but it's good to know, I guess, what the gaps are between what we support and what other people may need. So there's actually a company called Yoke AI. They fork our builder. So they
Okay.
don't use our builder straight on. They actually wrap it. Uh, and there's a few reasons for that. But basically, there are people who take what we build, but then add stuff on top of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. We've also seen people do some like pretty interesting things that we didn't think of, like like
This is
adding. So they'll do something like create a custom builder, which is basically just using our builder, except they'll add in extra options. For example, they might want to use certain Next.js plugins. So they'll provide a flag like dash dash analyze, right? And they'll actually like pull in a different plugin, install it to Next.js, and then we had a discussion between like how do we head off between their custom builder with our official builder. So
mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that you don't really run into until like people are using it for real in production, and then you discover all those edge cases. So that's always fun.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess even in the cases where teams have to wrap our builders, they don't have to necessarily do a whole lot to do that. Maybe, like I said, they just want to do that to provide some extra things on top, or some more defaults, since maybe our integration is pretty hands off as far as um, suggesting a lot of additional things there.
Yeah, I think we want to get to a place where uh, hopefully people will not need to do those customization. Like maybe we can have more support out of the box, so they don't have to. Because creating a custom builder is cool and stuff, but it's not for beginners, I would say. Like you have to know what you're doing before you can actually create your own builder and then call ours from your builder.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the experience for like if you don't need anything outside of what we provide, the experience is good. If you have any extra requirements for your app, then maybe we can still look at like some nicer API. For example, we already allow you to customize Next.js config, like however you want to within your app. We can think about like how to extend it more in the future, but in a safe way. Like we don't want to just say you can do whatever you want, because then you end up with some really gnarly stuff sometimes. And I do this all the time. Like if there's a way for me to hack something into the framework, I'll do it. And then in the future, when you upgrade the stuff, it's not going to be as nice. So we want to prevent those really bad cases, but also we understand that people do need to extend it for their own use cases. So that's something we're looking at in the future.
Okay. So like I said, the talk I gave was like it was a lightning talk. It was pretty high level. Talk about how you use Nx and Next.js together. And I guess we wanted to talk about like actually going through and getting a site together with it, or we can take questions. Which one do you like to?
We can wait a bit for questions. Maybe we can go through like an example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have like way more lower level detail stuff, but that's probably not going to be super interesting unless people are contributing to NX.
Yeah, so we can definitely get into that if you want to talk about like how like you said, there wasn't a lot of room for configuring Next.js within, or you don't have access to a lot of the things to configure there. So yeah, so how did the integration get to where we are now with NX?
Yeah, so we don't actually do a whole lot. Like if you look at the source code, we basically call their CLI, and all the heavy lifting is on their end. But I think for us, we're more worried about like how to integrate it with the rest of the NX ecosystem. So there's a few places where I guess in a default Next.js app, you would assume certain file structure, and that's not really the case for us. So there's a few customizations there. And one thing that we learned with Next.js and even some of our other plugins for NX is that it's usually better to encapsulate the customization within something that we control. So meaning like if there is something within the Next.js config that is required to make NX work with Next.js, it's better not to inline those logic inside the Next config, which we did in the beginning, and that was a mistake. It was easy because obviously there's nothing, no extraction required on our end. But then like if you need to update the code because like there's some breaking changes, for example, now you have to worry about code migrations, which is never great, and like it should be avoided. So now we take the approach of more like you'll require some kind of enhancer or some kind of config creator, and then we control that. So it's like a black box. So you just call it from the config. So when we do need to make some breaking changes, we don't need any migration in that case. And we take the same approach with Babel and Jest config and stuff now. So moving forward, there should be like way less breaking changes. Not that there weren't that many for Next.js, but in general, it should be like way more stable between the major versions for NX.
Hmm. So is that like I'm still new to the just the React ecosystem in general, but is that a pretty common case across? I think with at least with Next.js and like we could support Gatsby also. Uh,
Mhm.
that they want you to have like a minimal amount of configuration and which, like I said, makes it a little more challenging to configure on our end because they're working under the assumption that you're using that as like a standalone, maybe a
Yeah.
standalone repo or a standalone project.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of at least within the React ecosystem, like people tend to want conventions over configuration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like even create React app, for example. I mean, there's a way you can configure the Webpack config still, but by default, out of the box, they hide everything from you. And Next.js is actually pretty extensible. There's a lot of hooks you can go into to like customize it. Gatsby, I think, is a little bit more opinionated, so it's a little bit harder to configure. But with Next.js, we haven't struggled too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just like if there's any NX specific things that we want to be in your project to make it work within the workspace, like those things should not be exposed to the user. They should be hidden. Kind of like if you have Babel plugins,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you tend to work with presets, not just like a big collection of different plugins. Like you actually want just like a React preset, like an amp preset. So we provide those from NX point of view to make sure like if you don't need to do any customization, you just have like one line in your config and you're done instead of like 100 lines of code or whatever.
And like you said, those things kind of build up as far as being able, like you said, being able to migrate between versions and make that transition. I think a little more difficult there. So definitely think a balance to be had there of how much you get exposed to uh, in that way.
Yeah, and I think the main benefit here, and this is not NX or sorry, Next.js specific, but we have so many different use cases that we see as a NX tour team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like we've been making small, subtle changes to just make the whole experience within NX workspaces work well within even like IDEs, right? So you're in VS Code. Before we have weird things like if you mix ESLint and TSLint projects together, you get errors for some reason, even though it's not really an error.
Mm-hmm.
Because like some projects use TSLint, some projects use ESLint. So like we try to address all those cases for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So you're gaining a lot of benefit from just all the different use cases and experiences that we've encountered, and we just put that into the NX project itself.
Mm-hmm. So I guess a lot of that um, is people using Next.js with NX, and I guess a mixture of. I know we have people on the team that use React and Next.js for like personal things. Is it like a mix there, or has most of it come from like maybe client projects or things that we've
Uh,
seen of people usage?
yeah, so I think the plain React experience, there has been a lot of learnings from actual production apps. And
Mm-hmm.
I won't mention the clients and stuff, but basically the Next.js app, it's a little bit more of I would say my personal playing around with it and then talking to a few folks. There's
Mm-hmm.
been a little bit less uh, experience gained from like real production app, I feel, compared to the React app, which is not surprising because the market share for React app is obviously a lot bigger than like a Next.js
Mm-hmm.
market share. So uh, like if people do have use cases that we don't address well, like definitely do open the issue and we'll take a look. Um, I feel like the experience now should be pretty good. Like we've gone through it multiple times with different setup and it seems to work really well. But I'm not gonna say like we address every single use case out there, right?
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I can. I can say with some confidence that we can't support everyone's use case because people come up with it and try to use it in many different ways, and then maybe they, like I said, the people have to add their own stuff on top of it. or things like that. So
Yeah, for the most part, like if there is a customization someone needs and it doesn't belong in our official plugin, we can suggest like, if it's a schematic, just create your own. You can call ours and then like modify the files after the fact. If it's to do with the builder, I mean, you can take the custom builder route, which is more advanced, I think, but it's doable. Otherwise, like we can discuss what is missing and we can think about how to support those customizations on our end.
yeah, okay. So you want to go through a walkthrough of how you build a site with Next.js and Nx?
I don't have
All right.
anything really interesting, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, I can show basically whatever people have already seen, if they play around Next.js. But I do see some questions. I don't know if we want to do the questions first.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
there's a couple.
This one, I guess we'll start with this one. It's not Next.js. Well, let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any Next.js one specific about this one. Is it possible to build Next.js with TypeScript not using Babel?
So I guess some clarification on that, right? Like we do generate TypeScript code, so it is going through TypeScript, but through Babel. So we use the the TypeScript preset for Babel. I imagine maybe the question could be rewarded to say like, are we using TS loader versus Babel loader? And that's a whole other thing. We don't control that part, which is good for us because we're just deferring to Next.js for their support of TypeScript. So I guess that's the answer. The quick answer is no. It's always going to go through Babel. I think that's actually good because like everything within the React ecosystem uses Babel pretty much. So you don't want to deviate from that.
Okay. Good question. If you see anyone specifically you want to highlight,
Sure.
then we can put those up.
There's one from Ray asking about. This is not Next.js specific, I guess. But it's about
Example repos.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's to do with maybe the same examples except within React. Okay, yeah, he did clarify now. So the answer is not really. Like there's a book that because of reasons I haven't finished, but it's supposed to highlight some of the same patterns, but it's not the same kind of book. So it's not saying here's a pattern, here's how you do it. It's more I guess incidental in the book. So I will show those examples. And I can tweet it out after. The book is not completed, but there's a preview version of it. So I can tweet it out after this office hours. But
Okay.
But basically, anything you see in the Angular examples book, you can do the same way for React. It's just, I guess, the commands and schematics that you run will be different. But like we recommend structuring your app a certain way. You can do the same thing. And it's almost one-to-one too. Like if you see anything with NGRX, you can replace it with Redux for React if that's what you want to do. It's more or less one-to-one.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll add a link to that. Add a link to the book preview in the show notes, so people can definitely check that out afterwards. Let's see. This is a good one. Do you think Remix Run will be officially supported? For those people that don't know, Remix Run is a relatively new, I would say, approach to server-side rendering within React. It's similar to what Next.js does, but I think they just go about it a different way. I don't think we have. Well, I guess you can speak on that, but I don't think we have any.
Yeah. No, not at this point. I think for us, like we don't work on NX full time. If people are not aware of that, it's our part-time work that we're spending on maintaining and building NX. So we have to pick and choose what we focus on. That being said, we do have a great community on Slack. Lots of NX plugins are third party. So if someone really feels they want to use certain framework or technology that we don't support officially, you can feel free to build it yourself. And you can let us know. Like we might be able to list it on our NXDev website. Like we do list a few. We say like I guess the blessed, is that the word? I can't remember what we use, but like kind of like the blessed plugins or something on
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I'll bring up the NX community page here. Like I said, we have all the ways you can reach us through GitHub, Slack. You can sign up for the newsletter to get updates. And as Jack mentioned, we got community plugins here where you can see. Let's see if we can get some more of these on the screen there. More community plugins where for Ionic and React, Docker, pretty much, or Vue plugins. Spring Boot ones that I just saw recently. Go. So a lot of different areas that you can extend on top of NX to do what you need or want it to do if it's something that we don't say provide out of the box, and maybe Remix and Run is one of those things.
Yeah, and in the future, say like if something becomes really big and a lot of people use it, we can consider it. But just right now, we have to be a little bit more strict about what we support. If someone does want to build a plugin and they run into issues, let me see. We have the Slack, community Slack, and I think there is a channel specifically for plugin authors. But yeah, so you can join that, and if you need some help, we can walk you through whatever you're struggling with.
Yeah, definitely join the Nrwlians support community support Slack channel or Slack workspace. Definitely a growing number of people in there, in many different areas that people will help with, like I said, support, or if you're a plugin author or you want to contribute to the NX repo itself, you can definitely do that.
Yeah, and most of the core members are in there. We may not respond like right away. Like I said, we do have other things we work on, not just NX. So, but we try to be responsive to people when they have issues and stuff. Especially if you do a direct message. Like if you need some help on some channel, I might not be in the channel, just so you're aware. But if you do have some pressing issue, you can feel free to DM me inside the Slack org. So that way I can see it quicker.
Cool. Yeah, so everybody reach out to reach out to Jack with your Next.js React NX integration questions, and he'll try to get back with you in a timely fashion. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. So I think if anyone has like Next.js specific questions, especially if you play around with it and say maybe you have some issues that you ran into or just have some questions, definitely type it out. I do see one question about React Native, so I can do a quick plug.
Yeah, is React Native also on the radar of Narwhal?
Yeah, so the good news here is we're pretty close. I've been working on and off with Adam, who's another NX developer, and we're to the point where I can confidently say within the next couple weeks, I think we should have a first release. And that means you can generate a new app, like a React Native app. You can use workspace libraries the same way you would do it with a normal React Native app. And you can build it, right? You can build it, release it to Play Store or the App Store. So that's pretty cool. There is a repo for it. So it's under Narwhal. It's on GitHub, Narwhal, NX React Native. If you want to see what's going on, there's one issue there that's tracking the progress.
Okay, yeah, I'll bring up the link here. Get to it. Narwhal NX-React-Native repo there. And there's an issue there for initial release. So if you're interested in, I think we have some unofficial support.
We had a few people express interest, so they started maybe a plugin. I don't know if they were ever published, because the integration is not hard, I would say, but it's a little bit tricky. So it's not someone who it's not like someone can just build it overnight kind of thing. There are some minor issues that you run into with React Native. So with this one, you should be able to just create an app and build it right away. You can deploy it, or publish it.
Okay. Cool. So let's see. There's another question. We got all the React ecosystem questions. What about Preact support? I guess is that something special you'd have to have or use or?
I don't actually use Preact. I've never used it, so I can't answer this super well. But from what I understand, depending on what features of React you use, you should be able to just swap it out with Preact. And it provides like a smaller library size. So I think that's why people use it. But I haven't looked at it in like a couple of years, so I don't actually know. My knowledge is not up to date. But I'm just going to guess if you use our React schematics, but then you swap out React with Preact, it should just work. But I'm not too sure. And this is actually a good example of like, because Preact is supposed to be very close to React, you could use our schematics and then just update the files after the fact to be what you need. So people aren't familiar, there's a concept called workspace schematics, or you can just write your own schematic the same way that we write schematics, except it's specific for your workspace, and you don't have to install any additional npm packages. So that's what I would recommend if there's a workspace using Preact.
Yeah, I think definitely workspace schematics is one big thing that people should take advantage of within NX. When I did the talk for Next.js Conf, I only covered them briefly, but it was more or less from the point of view of, you can generate a new Next.js app or generate a new React app or, generate a library of shared components and generate a component within that shared library. But all that was done using using workspace schematics. The guy here from the docs.
Yeah. It's hard to. Sorry, I was gonna say like it's hard to talk about it during like a quick conference talk or a demo, because the workspace schematic is very specific to your company's needs or your team's needs. So it's hard for us to show like a generic reason why you might want to use workspace schematic. But this particular one where Preact and stuff could be a good use case for it, where you're using mostly what we use or what we provide, and you just want to customize it slightly. So you can say like call out to our schematic, and then the next step is just to open some files and do some string replacements, for example. And I guess sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, we did a previous episode where I basically did that. I used used the existing schematics that we provide out of the box and just replace some strings in there I called two schematics together to combine like a component and a service to do that. So definitely an easy way to get up and running with that.
Yeah, and it should be pretty easy to author. Like for us, whenever we do a schematic, we have to be careful not to do any code manipulation that's unsafe, right? Like we shouldn't do string replacements within the core NX because it's not a safe operation. You actually need to parse AST and manipulate AST and then write it out. But if it's just for your own org, like don't worry about the AST, just string replacements, right? Because you know what you're writing, so so shouldn't be that hard to write.
Yeah. Okay. You may. I haven't seen many people just say use the string replacements, but I definitely think that it's the easier route to take. If you, like I said, you're working with a fixed thing and you know what you're targeting, and there isn't much variation there.
Yeah, because unless you're working day in day out with the TypeScript AST, like even for myself, like I actually have to copy and paste the code, go to like AST Explorer, and then figure out like, okay, what am I looking for? Like it's a very time consuming process. So definitely string replacements if you can. get away with it.
Yes, I have pasted many snippets of code into ASD Explorer trying to see what the structure looks like. We're trying to drill down into that, uh, and most of the times I end up just using like the utilities that were already in the core of NX for the workspace in the workspace package. So it has a lot of things in there that you can just use out of the box to accomplish some of that stuff.
Yeah, we have a few. They're not exported from the main index, I think. But if you know where to look, you can get some some very useful utilities. But because they're not part of the actual official public API, we don't guarantee that it's not going to move or change later. Just that being said, they've been pretty stable for like a long time, so so it should be okay
Yep.
for the most part.
We always got the we always have to couch that with saying they're there, but you know they could break because they're internal.
Yeah.
So just be forewarned.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So there's another question. Can we create an app or lib without using the create workspace command by just adding a folder?
Okay, you wanna?
Yeah, I think. Um, Yeah, I think you can definitely add an app or lib manually into the workspace. If you have an existing workspace, then you'd have to do a little more manual work to try to integrate that in with integrate Nx within an existing workspace that way. Uh, but generating an app or library is the same as copying some files over. You just have to. I guess the part that may be a little tricky is after you copy or add the folders, you have to update like the configuration, whether it be your workspace.json file to point to the right configuration files that you've added for that particular library, and the nx.json file, or in the tsconfig file, because those are the three main points I would say for a workspace that you're gonna have to, or usually have to touch when you add a new application or library.
Yeah, I would just add. I guess it depends on like what they're trying to do. Like if they're trying to migrate, I think we do have some migration guide on NX Dev where you can follow. There's one for React, there's one for Angular. So I would go with that. But otherwise, like I don't think you should be creating app or lib manually. Like even if you copy and pasted something existing, you don't know if something is in there because of some specific reasons, then you may not want to copy. And the fact that you copy it over is incidental, and it's just gonna be unnecessary for whatever you're developing. So try to use those schematics if you can. But if it's existing, then definitely check out the migration guides that we have.
Yeah, I would definitely, like I said, we have a guide for migrating a create React app into an NX workspace. So definitely check that out.
Yeah. So even if you're not using CRA, so we will have more guides coming. But basically, you can apply the same principles of adding the npm packages and whatever, and apply it to something that's non-CRA as well.
So another question is, how would you add assets from a lib into a Next.js app? NX Next Builder doesn't support assets like the web or Angular builders.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I guess the short answer is like there isn't a good way. Assets has always been a little bit hard to work with, even within like a normal React app, because we basically rely on TypeScript to handle the imports for us. So like if you import it from a workspace library, we go ask TypeScript like, hey, can you resolve this path for us? Obviously, assets do not go through TypeScript. Surprise, right? So so the way that you map them is a little bit trickier. There is a way we could make this work within Next.js, but not right now. So if we had the same assets option for the Next.js builder, then this could work. But as is right now, there's no way you can do it out of the box, unfortunately. So you will have to host your assets within your app for now.
Okay. So at least maybe something to look forward to in the future, but still a manual process today. Let's see. Another question: Will Webpack Module Federation have a role to play in NX? This is fairly new. I think, at least from the Angular side of things, it will be in the next major release version, and I think it's opt-in at that point. So I think at least we'll be taking a look at it to see what kind of integration we can provide there for NX with Webpack Module Federation.
Yeah, I think for the React side, we're not actively looking into it, but if the Angular team can do some work on that space, and if it's useful, we'll definitely take a look. Like the default builders we have are a lot of it we were inspired, I guess, by the Angular builders. So I think that's the answer. If they do something and people find it useful, we'll definitely have a look. But as of right now, there's no plan on that support.
Okay, let's see. This one was brought up. It's pretty interesting. Are NX builders just CLI builders? I guess he's referring to Angular CLI builders. I think you just touched on this some a minute ago, as far as they were being inspired. But what would you say about those?
I mean, yes, I don't know any cases where they're going to be different, except for one. So there's a run commands builder. It's inside the workspace package. For those who are not familiar, although we support a lot of different things with different builders, sometimes people do need to call specific shell scripts because they have like a deployment script or whatever. So you can literally just use run commands and then call any kind of script you want, and then it'll just work. So that one particular, because we like with NX, we don't fail if you pass in extra arguments. So if your builder has a schema and it doesn't have certain options and you pass in extra ones, we don't fail on that. We just forward it. With the CLI though, the Angular CLI, you have to make sure the option exists in the schema or else it'll fail. So the API there is like, if you run the run commands builder, you pass an extra one. With the Angular CLI, you have to do, I think it's like -- args, and then inside the string, pass in all the extra args. With the NX CLI, you don't have to do that. You can just pass in arguments as normal. So that's the only difference I know of. Yeah. But other than that, if you're authoring builders, it should be the same.
Yeah, got to bring up the docs here again. If you're using the run command, well, I'll say up front, run commands is definitely a very flexible way to, like you said, add your own scripts or run your own commands, whether it just be one particular thing or even a sequence of things that you want to, maybe need to spin up your app and server at the same time, or like I said, pass some additional args when you're running a command. The run commands definitely work there and work well for that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't used run commands before and you're just like have a bunch of stuff in your npm scripts, maybe take a look at run commands and kind of integrate those in with integrate those in as targets in your configuration there.
Yep, and it's super useful, especially this is a little bit more advanced maybe, but if your shell script has some kind of like output artifact, we can cache that as well if you specify the outputs option. So I see there's a question from Dan about environment variables.
Yeah, is the first one, you look at the first one or the second one? Maybe it's just the second one is just continuation of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think the second one.
Okay, so any best practices to share environment variables with library modules that can be shared and used to any app any app, excuse me, React, Angular, or Next.js?
Yeah, so I think first, if you divide like apps versus libraries, like libraries shouldn't usually depend on environment variables. Like they can have some configuration. I guess depends on the library. So for example, like if you have a utility library, and it has different branching depending on some kind of like process.env dot whatever, like that shouldn't be part of the library logic. Like you should probably have some kind of options object that like you can configure to do one or the other, right? In terms of like there are a few things I can think of that could be legitimate. Like if you need to check process.env.nodeenv, we do support that for all the React builders. So you can check that. Sorry, you can put that into your library. Say, for example, when it's in development mode, you may need to, I don't know, measure performance or something, right? So you can do process.env.nodeenv. That's fine. I can't remember if that works for Angular apps. I don't. I think
No, I think you're still restricted for Angular apps, where you can't access the process.m that way, because it
yeah.
wants you to use the environments to do that.
Yeah, so at least for Angular stuff, sorry, for the React side, you can always use that. Or there's also on nx.dev, if you look at the guide for environment variables, you can prefix your variable with nx underscore, and those ones will be pulled into your application or your library, so you can always access those environment variables. I think it's
Yeah, I think
maybe at the
that
bottom somewhere.
still only applies to.
That's still for only for React, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so that's pretty much it. If you're just using React, you have either the node.env or nx underscore as environment variables you can pass in. But otherwise, I would say, in terms of libraries, you probably want to provide some kind of configuration on the edges of your library, so you can use that to determine what to do instead of having like a shared variables. I mean, it's a very generic advice, so without knowing specific use cases, it's hard to advise. But I think some kind of options for libraries will be best.
Yeah. I agree. Let's see. Yeah, you're saying like an agnostic lib that can be consumed by any app. Yeah, I think if, like you said, if you're going down that route, then you're gonna have to abstract away like the particular framework or whatever you're using from the library itself, especially if it's just utilities or things like that.
Yeah, because you can imagine. So, for example, if you use like date functions like that, date FNS library, imagine if instead of passing in some options, they tell you like set these environment variables. Like it's not a very natural way to consume a library, I think. Before apps is completely fine because apps do understand that they run in different environments. So I think for apps, that's a valid way to do it.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Did you have anything? I don't know if we covered everything you wanted to on the next integration or anything else coming up soon there.
Yeah, I guess just a couple of small things. So Next.js 10 came out. So we're gonna do an update on that. We made some decisions in the beginning that doesn't play nicely with the fast refresh. So now the reloading for Next.js app is a lot faster with fast refresh, but it requires like if you have a functional component, it has to be a named function, or else it wouldn't understand that it's a React component. And unfortunately, we for some reason went with arrow functions because that's the way we code a lot of our Nx stuff. So we don't have a migration for it. There's a code mod provided by the Next.js team that will migrate your stuff for you. So you can always check that out, or personally, I would just do a quick search and replace through my code base, because like you shouldn't have that many components anyway. So if you do upgrade to Next.js 10, just be aware you will need to convert those const component name equals whatever into named functions. And that's the only, I wouldn't even say it's a breaking change. It's just you're not going to get fast refresh, basically. So that's something just to be aware of. On the React world, we're also updating to React 17, which came out. We're taking a look at, there's a support now, which is still in beta, where you don't have to do import star as React from React. So you can just write JSX and it'll just work. So that requires some changes or some updates to the Babel plugin. So we're looking into that as well.
But that's not something. That's not like a custom Babel plugin that we own. That's just something we have to work on integrating in.
Yeah, so we're not going to do it out of the box, I think, but we want to make sure if you do create a workspace, like a React workspace, you can just change like one small thing, like maybe update the Babel plugin or something, and it should just work. We just want to make sure that experience is good. So React is not going to like in 17 you don't have to do this, so it's not necessary. We just want to make sure for folks who do want to try it, they don't have to be blocked by us.
Okay. But I guess in general, migrating to the next version of Next.js, that's a mouthful, uh, should be pretty straightforward, I guess, as far as we know.
Yeah, I mean, depends on the workspace, but as far as I know, there's no breaking changes. The one thing that I mentioned, it shouldn't be breaking. It's just that you won't get fast refresh. So if you do upgrade, I mean, if you already have a workspace currently, just upgrade your Next.js to the next version. If you want to do it before we publish our NX 10.4 or whatever, right? So you can already do that. We're not going to provide any migrations for Next.js 10, but we will make sure like when you create a new workspace, it's going to be on the latest version.
Okay. So just enlighten me for a second here, because like I said, I'm not that familiar with these things in the React ecosystem. But fast refresh, is that the same as HMR, or is that different? Is it better? Uh,
It's so I don't know the low level details, but it's better than HMR. It actually replaced it. So like when you edit your source code and you change the component, it's going to do a fast refresh on the page, and it'll maintain the component state and props and everything. So you don't need like a page reload, or you don't have to reload so many things and reset the component state. Or yeah, so that's a basic gist of it, and I guess it just makes the development experience a little bit better. So you don't have to like edit your code, go back, and like everything's reset, and you have to like click here and do that again. Like things are just in place on the page.
oh, okay. So yeah, that is nice. Okay, let's see. I think that's all we have, at least for topics this week. And I didn't see any more questions in the chat, so I think we can go ahead and wrap it up there. Um, do have some things to plug, of course. If you're, thanks for all the people in the chat. You can follow us on Twitter at NXDevTools. We got at least I saw a tweet over the weekend that Kent C. Dodd says that he's heard good things about NX DevTools. So I'm gonna I'm gonna piggyback off that and say that we got at least some good publicity there. Um, Definitely, I'll show the few of the docs on the site there, but definitely check out our docs at nx.dev, where we have guides and things of, like we talked about, workspace schematics and migrating from Create React app to an NX workspace, and the Next.js plugin that we maintain there. we have a team full of people that work on NX, including Jack and Adam, and I'm sure there are other people. So you would know better than me
Yep.
about the other people that work on the. I should have mentioned them during the talk. Now that I think about it, but who else is on the team of people that works on the React integrations?
Yeah, well, we have some help from two new Narwhal members. So Katerina and Tassos, they're both in Greece. So they're currently helping out with some of the bugs. Like we kind of, I wouldn't say exploded, but we more than doubled our installs. So I think that probably means more people are using it, whether it's in production or just playing around. And that's great for us, but at the same, on the same, like, at the same time, like it does mean we have a lot more issues just as a result. So we're really grateful to any new team members who are coming in, like helping out with the issues.
Yeah, definitely thankful for Katerina and Tassos working on some of those things there, and like I said, Adam too, who's been there working on that stuff also. Also want to give a big shout out to Yuri. I will share his link to his new Egghead course in the chat. But he just launched a course on Egghead that's scaling React development with Nx, and I will bring that up here in a second. But yeah, definitely check out his Egghead course. Let's see, I'll bring up the tweet here. He even has an intro video there for you to watch before you start the course. So Egghead course, scaling React development with Nx, completely free. I'll just throw some emphasis on that there. Completely free to try out, to check out, see how you can use React with Nx. I know he spent a lot of work on it, and I'm pretty sure it's awesome. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, Yuri's great, and he's a pro at doing courses. So there's no excuse to not watch a course, I think.
You got some free time, you want to learn some Nx and React, watch his course. So definitely check that out. And I'll link that in the show notes also. I'm going to plug Jack's Twitter handle. Hope I got... Oh, that's not right.
I am not on
You're
Twitch,
not on
unfortunately.
Twitch.
No.
There we go. We're going to do some live editing here. If I get it right this time. And there we are. Hopefully that's correct.
Yep, that is correct.
Yeah, but definitely follow Jack on Twitter. If you have any questions, like I said, you can find him on Slack. If you have any questions, you can follow me on Jack.
I would say that the best way to reach me at this point is either Twitter. I still try to address the DMs, and then on Slack.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think that'll be it for this week of NX Office Hours. Like I said, give a shout out to Zach for hosting last week. You'll probably see him again next time. Thank you, Jack, for coming on again and showing us NextJS integration, and we look forward to seeing more come out of that too.
Yeah, of course, anytime. It was fun.
Okay. With that, we'll see you later.